Denim Jean Front Details Part 2. So we're going to continue on with the details. Where we left off was the waistband, belt loop, button, buttonhole, and inside back, and center front seam. So if you haven't seen that one, look at that tutorial first and then follow this one. So we're going to go ahead and do the pocket. So we're going to start on one side, and I like to use this. This is what we do at a typical jean pocket. So we're going to go ahead and extend. Okay, and get a nice curve. Usually you want a 90-degree angle here and 90-degree angle here, typically. And make sure that your line isn't too short, that it actually touches the edge. Okay, what we're going to do, and one of the things that I noticed already is the template's a little dark and kind of getting in the way. So I'm going to go ahead and on my template layer, I'm going to dim the images a little bit more to about 35. And that way, there we go. It doesn't get in the way as much. Okay. There we go. Okay, so going back to details and the pocket. Some people will go ahead and select the line and make a copy. I'll just press Alt, drag it off to the side, and try to adjust it. And sometimes this works, in particular if you've had some experience, you can actually be pretty good at adjusting the line and getting it to be pretty parallel. But it gets tricky, but since I know several people will do this, I will show it to you. Okay. So that's one row, but typically we have two rows, so you have to make a copy of that line, bring it on over, and make sure that that one's parallel to the first stitch line. I'm sorry, it's not quite as responsive because of the screencast. And that's not too bad, but if you're basically going on, I would say, luck, in the sense that you're trying, adjusting, and sometimes it's a little closer on the bottom than it is on the top. You have to do a lot of adjusting. So another way that you can do this is by using the brush, making a pattern brush with the 2-needle cover stitch. So if I'm doing a 1 point dash, 1 point gap cover stitch, then what I want to do is I can draw a segment, and right now it's on pixels, so I'm going to view my rulers, right click, and let's say I want it in points. And now when I do my line, I could say I want a 1 point line that's only 1 point. So that's my dash. And I want the stroke to be 0.25, and I know it's not changing because it's aligned to pixel grid, so let's fix that. Now I can change it. There we go. Okay, and that will keep it consistent to that. So what we can do is, and let me zoom in, you're going to make a copy of this. So select it with the selection tool, press Alt. Okay, and make it look like an equal sign. That's what it needs to look like an equal sign. And then what you're going to go ahead and drag it onto your brush menu. So with my black arrow, I'm just going to go ahead and select and drag it on over to my brush menu. It's a pattern brush, so I'm going to click pattern brush and click OK. And since you do want to be able to change the color, especially if you're doing clipping masks or you're doing a coloration for denim later, For the colorization, you want to make sure that you put hue shift, and that means you can change the color later. If you don't, it'll have to be black no matter what. It'll stay black. So select hue shift if you can, that way you can change the color later if you wish. Click OK. And now what you can do is, let's say you select the line, let me make it solid again, and I just dragged it out. So I made a copy of the line and just dragged it out. Instead of doing that second row and adjusting, I just go ahead and apply the brush, and now I have a 2-needle cover stitch. Now, if you're like, well, wait a minute, it's a little, you know, I want it spaced out more. You can always make changes to it. Like if you want it spaced out a little bit more, then you need to space it out more here when you make it in that process. But you can also double click on it and change the scale if you want. You could scale it larger, scale it smaller. You can add the spacing. So the spacing default is at 0, so you can do it in percentages. You can say 5%. Click OK and apply to strokes. And if you're like, well, I didn't really see much of a difference, so that you can go ahead and click again. So on 25%, click OK, apply to strokes, and it could space it out more for you. See? Okay. And if it's still too close, then here you'd want to actually bring it down just a little bit. Actually, that's a little too much. Let's say I wanted to bring it down just a tad more, like that. And then I can go ahead and redrag, create a new one, pattern brush, click OK. Pattern brush 2, it's my second one. I could put revised, whatever you want. Again, hue shift for coloration. And I want about 25 to 30% spacing. Click OK. And now what I can do is take that out. Let's press Alt. And I'm going to go ahead and apply the second one, and then just adjust. And now you can be rest assured that it will be even, which is what we like. And now it's not leaving anything to guesswork. Look, it's perfectly even for you. And you just have to adjust the line a little bit. Okay, perfectly even. Beautiful. Another thing that typically we have here are called rivets. Those are little metal points of reinforcement. So you're just going to press shift for a circle. And at this point you want the stroke to be, so I'm going to take out the align to pixel grid. I'm going to make it 0.2, really thin stroke. And I'm going to go ahead and make a copy of that. Oops. Press Alt, make a copy, and make it much smaller. And put it right smack and dab in the middle. I could zoom into that. Actually, that needs to be a little smaller so I can transform scale. I want it to be about 50% of that. Click OK. There we go. Okay. Okay, so that's going to be a rivet. Now, very important, since this goes on top of the stitching, you need to make sure that both circles have white fill. Okay. And you can go ahead and group them. If you want to turn them into a symbol and keep them in the symbol library, you can by dragging them to the symbol library and making a little symbol for it. It's entirely up to you. But with the white fill, now you have a rivet there. I need another one up here. Pretty standard. Okay. We also have a small pocket on the inside, so typically what you're going to do is draft your pocket. You can draft it with a pen tool. You can use a rectangle tool as well. At least start off with a rectangle. Take out the fill for now. And I'm going to go ahead, deselect it. And see, typically it would be on the inside like that. It's that useless little pocket that you can't really fit anything in. Don't really see the purpose of it, except maybe to fit a quarter. No one carries change anymore, so it doesn't matter. So you have a couple options. You can just draft it with the pen tool, or if you use the rectangular tool, you can actually cut it. So behind the eraser tool, there is this thing called the scissor tool, and you can go ahead and cut segments off. So I slice the segments off. I'll get rid of that. Then I have this. Okay, doesn't need to be slanted because it's not going to be straight up and down. And basically, depending on the stitches, but typically the stitches here, we're going to have just a straight, usually 2 rows. Sometimes you only have 1 row. It depends on the pair of jeans, but a lot of times it is 2 rows. So what you can do is select the line, press Alt for copy, bring it down. Oops. Press Alt. There we go. I am going to shorten it. So I'm just going to select the endpoints, bring it in with the white arrow. Actually, I don't want that, so I can go ahead and delete that. Delete anchor point. Don't really want that. There we go. I don't really want that either. There we go. And then go ahead and apply the brush pattern to that. Perfect. And typically we do see a rivet on there, so I'll go ahead and make a copy and put a rivet there as well. It does need to be arranged sent to the front to make sure that it's covered. I do see it's slightly small. I can make it a little bit bigger. There we go. There we go. Actually, this is a little small, so I'm going to go ahead and change that. Sorry, it's just really slow. My goodness. Okay, and I put it right on there. Okay, perfect. And basically what we're going to do is mirror all this on over to the other side minus that front pocket. So what you can do is you can go ahead and drag a box, select everything you want to carry over. So I want this rivet, I want, if I can get it to respond, I'm going to want this, and I want the belt loop, so I'll select that as well, and I want to make sure I get that stitching as well, and I don't want that pocket, so the small pocket, so I go ahead and have all that selected in the pocket, and I'm going to go ahead and click on the reflect tool, and I'm going to make sure I just click right smack in the middle, press Alt, and click vertical copy. It brings it on over to the other side. So you don't have to draft it on the other side, you just make a copy, and there we have your details reflected on. And now we're on to part 2.